We had a card over the weekend. I wrote a letter to Carlos Condit, and I was going to post this on Facebook. And the only reason I have, and I still might, I haven't yet, just because I simply haven't gone to Facebook and pasted it. But I'm mad at Carlos. I'm mad at Carlos for Carlos being mad at Carlos. Okay? Carlos Condit goes out, he fights, he comes in second, and he says, and I quote, "I just don't know if I still belong," end quote. Well, I have a big problem with that. Okay, this guy's amazing. And they're all good, aren't they? They're all good. Regardless of what we say, they're all really good. And then you've got the great ones. Then you've got the champions. Then you have a whole nother level of these amazing, rare talents. Carlos Condit falls into that. Carlos Condit is that amazing, and he's talking about he doesn't know if he belongs. Well, excuse me, Carlos, let's back up a little bit, because maybe you haven't stood back at 10,000 feet like the rest of us and stared at your own career, okay? Two-time world champion, WEC and UFC. It's got a win over Nick Diaz. I'm going to jump all around here. I can't remember what order they went in. He fights George St. Pierre, 25 minutes. He fights Tyron Woodley, gets his knee hurt. Good for Carlin, not good for Tyron, not necessarily bad for Carlos. He got his knee hurt. He has a fight with Johnny Hendricks, who is the former world champion. Carlos, there's some times where you don't lose a fight, but just time runs out. Okay, Johnny Hendricks puts a takedown clinic on Carlos, so when it goes to the cards, it favors Johnny. The other side of that story is Carlos got up from every damn one of those takedowns. Never backed down, pushed the pace, tit for tat the entire time. Time ran out. That's what happened. He fights in a very disputed, loses a very disputed 5-round contest to the world champion Robbie Lawler. He then, and they almost ran that one back. That was so controversial and such a terrific contest, they almost did an immediate rematch. The talks were in place. In fact, we all as fans thought that's the direction it was going to go. They then end up going in a different direction. Carlos main events a card over the weekend against Damian Maia. Now, he gets Maia'd. And what I mean by that is there's positions you don't want to end up in with Damian Maia. You're not going to win those positions. Carlos has, every fighter has them. They have their spots they want to get the action to, and if they can, they're going to have good moments. Damian Maia found his position right out of the gate. To make things exponentially worse, it was right out of the gate. Carlos Condit likes a little bit longer fight. He's an endurance athlete. He likes to wear on you and annoy you and chop you down like a tree. Bump, 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 all night long. That's what he likes to do. Particularly when you're dealing with a grappler of Maia's skills and his abilities. You don't want to be underneath him early because you're also dry. Cardio doesn't get a play in. Maia's not worn down one single bit, and you're dry. Not a good recipe to get out of submission. So he loses a position against Maia. Now, we just ran through the list of world and former world champions that Carlos had to fight. One of the hardest resumes, one of the hardest schedules ever in the UFC. Ever. Right next to, and maybe in front. You guys remember Keith Jardine? Go back and look up Keith Jardine's fight schedule, who he had to fight and when he had to fight the guys. One of the most remarkably, most difficult schedules I've ever seen an athlete have to go through. Insert Carlos Condit. Nothing but world champions, nothing but 5-round contests, nothing but former champions. Never held a ranking less than the top 3 since they have come out with the rankings. Okay? That's how good this guy is. He then loses to Maia, who's not a former world champion, but he is the most swerved guy in the history of the UFC. There has never been look, politics matter, timings matter, rankings and weight classes and venues. There's all sorts of things that go into it, but for whatever reason, there has never been an athlete more swerved of his title shot opportunities than Damian Maia. So where Carlos can possibly come out with a poor assessment of himself, I don't know. I'm not on board with it. And usually when we're having these talks, guys, we're having it in the opposite way. We're having it the exact opposite way, which is a guy stays in too long. A guy stays in the game longer than he should. He doesn't know that his race is ran. He doesn't see himself as clearly. That happens. That's a reality of human nature. I can't remember a time we've ever had an athlete where we're talking him off the ledge the other way. Hey, Carlos, you're the man. You've always been the man. You got 2 world championships to prove you're the man. Not just me shining up your ego right now. You have 2 world championships somewhere in your closet that say you're the man. Comes out and says he doesn't belong. I don't like it. Anthony Pettis. Here's another one over the weekend. Do you guys have any idea the monkey that he had on his back? Do you have any idea the weight that Anthony Pettis has been carrying around? Let me put this in perspective for you guys. Anthony Pettis is on the cover of the Wheaties box 24 months ago. The cover of the Wheaties box. That division is so hard and so competitive, and they're playing musical chairs with that belt so often that the champion who's on the cover of the Wheaties box leaves the division and goes down to 145. Now, as a fan, I love that because I love parity. Anthony Pettis also wasn't sure about his training. He was questioning everything. He goes out. He starts getting time in Albuquerque with Greg Jackson and rounds out there with those guys. He's coming back. All he's trying to do is figure things out. Now, everybody in the world in his path is getting their feelings hurt and what's Anthony up to. And, man, this is just a guy trying to win. That's all this is. This is a guy cutting weight and sacrificing and changing his life, trying to get a win. So he goes out, and not only does he get the win, but it was a fantastic performance. And the reason I say that is his opponent put up a fantastic performance. It was just a great, great match. And we were talking about it earlier. There's some guys that have some positions, and you don't want to end up there. You do not want to end up in an Anthony Pettis guillotine. You don't want to end up in a triangle by Anthony Pettis. But he's got certain spots. He found one of those spots, he gets his hand raised. Now, the reason I love it is you've got this incredible parity now. Okay, nobody knows what Conor's going to do. I personally don't think he's going back to 45. I don't see the benefit. I don't see the advantage. His pay's not going to go up. He's already beat Jose. He's already got that. But I just don't personally see it. A lot of that's self-projection. If I was in Conor's shoes, what would I do, right? Then you guys can all put yourself in his shoes and weigh in with your own opinion there. I don't think he's going back to 145, but one of the encouragements to go to 145 is, what in the hell do we do with Jose? Jose's already fought Frankie. Then he fought Frankie again. Kenny Florian's retired. You got Max Holloway in the mix. You've got Dennis Bermudez coming. You got some of these guys, but they're not there where they can sell a car to be on a poster and headline a bill with Jose Aldo. Well, Anthony Pettis is. All of a sudden, what a difference a day makes. Because now we got a guy. Now Conor doesn't have to do it. He's not going to be getting the pressures. There's another fight everybody wants to see. Do you guys remember before Conor was ever on the scene, there was problems between Jose Aldo and Anthony Pettis. You guys may not remember this because I'm going back about 27 months. Going back a long time, but there was problems. Jose Aldo was king of the world for featherweight. Anthony Pettis was king of the world for lightweight, and these guys had problems. And they talked about it. And I can't remember all of it because I'm going back 2.5 years, but there was something where Jose said that Anthony wouldn't take the fight, and Anthony said, no, I've agreed to the fight. It's you that won't take the fight. They were going back and forth. And they were trying to make this contest. Well, now, and that's when they were at different weights, both holding the belt. Now Pettis is in the division. So forget about, and looking good. And undefeated in the division. I'll concede it's 1-0, but that's a former world champion that just busted onto to a new scene. He's undefeated in that division, any way you want to slice it. All of a sudden, Conor's presence at that weight class, isn't quite as necessary.